Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. What's up, boys?
What up, man?
It's a good morning from me, bright and early in Vancouver.
All right, yeah. The story of the world, man. Like we're more connected and more divided than ever. But Majid, you got something to kick us off at, man. Yeah, look, hit me with some good stuff.
Man, so the England cricket team is touring Pakistan right now,
Okay.
and they're playing cricket, England versus Pakistan, 7 matches. I went to the fourth match on Friday. This Friday, I went to National Stadium, and a very interesting third culture kid moment happened, and I just wanted to kick us off with that. They stamp us, when you walk into the stadium, they stamp you that you're good to go. We were going out of the stadium with a plan to re-enter, so I had to go and ask for another stamp because mine had wiped out. The guy looks at me, and I was wearing a black kameez, which is like the Pakistani, like just the shirt part, not the pants. I was wearing jeans, and I was wearing my hat like I am right now, backwards with the tilt. And the guy looked at me and he asked me if I am a foreigner. And I said, and I was with three local friends, by the way, friends who are apparently look and are Pakistani. And I told him yes, and he said, no, but you don't look like a foreigner. And I was like, interesting. I first started to ask him, what does a foreigner look like to you? But let's skip all of that. And I just told him, I responded with, listen, at a very foundational level, fundamentally speaking, where I come from, it is self-evident that all man was created equal. So like in our books, we don't have, they look like this or they look like that. And that was the interaction. It was just another, it's always very interesting that as much as we go back to the mantra, everywhere is home, but at the same time, nowhere is home. And that was sort of driven home with this, that I'm rooting for the home team. I'm living at home. I'm rooting for the home team. And the home fans are the ones who are saying, yo, like, you're kind of here, but you're also, you look like us, but you're from there. And like, it was just an interesting interaction. Thoughts?
I would say it doesn't necessarily surprise me per se, because I'm gonna assume that there's a lot of people who live in England who are from Pakistani background and they make their travels back and forth. They could be there visiting family, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, look, there's a cricket match on. I might as well go watch it while I'm here type of thing. So I don't know. I mean, how many locals wear their hat backwards to the side type of thing, let's just say? Or how many people wear the kameez and jeans? Like, wouldn't someone, if they're wearing the kameez, for example, wouldn't be wearing the entire, so like, there could be, I mean, to his defense, I guess you could say that there are indications that, well, you didn't necessarily grow up there your entire life. Maybe that's what he could have meant. It's like, I know you haven't lived in Pakistan your entire life type of thing.
No, that's absolutely what he meant. But one, it was very blunt and undiplomatic. If I was in the Western world, I would have complained about this behavior from like a stadium person to speaking to me like you don't look like an American. I would complain straight to the manager. So that's one thing. That's the benefit of the doubt thing that you mentioned, that like you'll cut him some slack. I was very chilled out about it. I didn't care. I told him like, this is highly offensive, but I am not offended. Like, I think it's highly inflammatory what you're saying and what you're suggesting. But I'm not offended. I'm used to like all of these 404s.
Why would it be offensive?
Because this is the, like, what does a Canadian, what does
Man,
a
what, you
foreigner
just want to
look
be
like?
accepted anywhere you go? Everywhere you go, you just want to be accepted for who you are?
Because I have sort of a rebuttally story that involves me being on the beach in Vancouver, but I'll let you finish your points.
What annoyed me is the foreigner in this case was there's a clear like dog whistle that a foreigner is white.
Okay.
Like, they wouldn't ask that from an Asian person, Asian descent. They wouldn't have asked African person. Or like in their mind, the foreigner is not the rest of South America. It's not that. It's only, white people kind of thing. And that was very weird. And again, in terms of the benefit of the doubt, no, they were mostly home fans, local fans. And again, if you do want to say this, you say it a different way. You literally say, where are you from? Instead of like, are you a foreigner? that there's a lot of othering in that language. But go ahead, Rashed, tell me what's up.
Maybe when you were walking up to them, were you talking to your buddies and everything, and you can hear that, well, he does hit, like when you're speaking in Urdu, for example, they can probably hear a slight accent from you. Seeing that you lived outside of Pakistan for so long.
They can tell immediately. It's not even like just with body language. They can
it's how you walk. It's how you walk. It's how it's like how you carry yourself. But I mean, I'm with Rashed on asking why would you be offended? Because one of the things that I've noticed, I think, is a big difference between sort of when I'm like, I'm going to put this in brackets. It's like the intention I feel from the person, like there's no way for me to know, but like sometimes somebody will ask me like, and they have sort of the, let's say, the sweetest intentions, I feel. So a lot of the times when I'm walking around in the, I'm going to call this just to get the blanket, like the third world, I'll get a lot of like, man, you don't make any sense. Like you don't fit the preconceived notions of what people should look like in my brain. And so I see you, which is me, and then they'll be like, oh, why do you talk like that? And I say, well, because I grew up in Canada. Oh, okay, all right, okay. Why do you? And it's friendly, but then there's times where that same interaction is like, it's all very similar words, but it's very like, you don't belong here, like where there is an assumption that like I don't belong here, like that, like, well, you shouldn't really be here. You don't you shouldn't exist, and that's a touchy subject.
So
driving through Chilliwack, the times that I've gone through Chilliwack on the way to the Okanagan from Vancouver, there's one particular gas station that you stop at right when you get into Chilliwack, and then you continue on your way. And not all of Chilliwack is banjo country, but a lot of Chilliwack is banjo country. But this particular gas station, the first time that I stopped there, like the person I was with, we stopped and she just says, "You ready?" And I'm like, "For what?" I get out of the car and I swear to you, every head turned. And I'm like, do I really look that not white? Like, seriously, like if I go to any European country that's even a Western European country, except for Germany, they think I'm from there, especially the Spanish or Portuguese, or I've never been to Italy, but probably the same type of deal, because people are like, you kind of have that look where you can be any one of those things type of thing. So it's just like, I've seen people who are, quote unquote white people, like Irish people, for example, have the same type of hair color as me, same colored eyes and stuff. I guess it's the skin tint. I don't know. But no, the look that you were just talking about the look was just like, you shouldn't be here. But it's Chilliwack. It's still in the Lower Mainland. Like, what are we talking about here? It's less than 2 hours away from Vancouver. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
By the way,
but that's not my story. My story is still something else.
I had a parallel encounter while you guys were talking. I remember, like, in the stadium, after returning back in, after dealing with this or like talking about this, the guy who was sitting next to me at the stadium, we had the same interaction. Where are you from? What do you do? In fact, he went a little over even, and he even asked, how much do you make over there? He literally asked me, what is your salary? Like abroad. Questions I have not asked you guys ever in like 20 years of knowing you. He asked me in 2 minutes, but his was a very different tone. That's what I mean. His was like an inviting, hey, where are you from? What's up? La, la, la. This guy, are you a foreigner? The way it was phrased and the way it was asked was very like, yo, like, what are you doing here, guys?
Usually, man, when
it's the tone that you're talking, you're
man, I think it's
tone.
also it's a pseudo position of authority, right? Like the guy sitting next to you has no authority over you. So but like you're going to ask for another stamp. Why, man?
Right.
What's wrong with you? You guys keep losing the stamps? Like, right? Like now I gotta start yelling at you and like I gotta discipline you because you people keep losing stamps and I
just came for a stamp. I don't know why I need to give my biography. I just came for a stamp. Do your job. I don't need to interact with you.
Like, aren't you trying to steal something from here?
At the stadium though, like, yo, we're watching the match, we're talking, it's fine. It's a different, exactly. It was just an all around like vibe thing. And the extra bit is just that if I was in the West, I would have definitely, if someone said, you don't look American, I would have talked to the manager that, yo, like, what kind of statement is that? Because that doesn't fly there. You can't say to somebody, you don't look like you belong from here. But Rashid, go ahead with your story.
My story is very different in the sense of it was last summer, I believe. So when I go to the beach, I wear what I call budgie smugglers. If there's any Australian listeners, they know what I'm talking about. It's like a Speedo. And the purpose for that is I have tan lines I need to maintain. So whatever. So TMI, but I don't care. So I'm on one of the beaches, like one of the more popular-ish beaches, I guess you can say. In this particular beach, there people bring like their big canopies and they set it up and they bring their barbecues and stuff like that. So it's like large groups of people. And we had a super hot summer last summer, right? We had the whole heat dome thing happening here in Vancouver. So I'm there just doing my thing, sun tanning, going into the water every so often, floating about, doing whatever. And so I'm sitting there and there's this large group of people behind me, and they were a mixed bag of people, actually. Like you can tell that there were some Latinos in that group. There was general white people. There was just like a huge mix of people, which is a normal Canadian thing. And then at one point, one of the people comes up, this older lady, she comes up to me and she looks at me. She's like, "Where are you from?" And I look up at her kind of confused. And I said, "I live here." And then when I spoke to her in like a clearly Canadian accent, she's like, "Oh." I said, "Well, no, I'm from Toronto originally, but I moved to Vancouver a couple of years ago and whatever, and I live here." She's like, "Oh, I thought you were Latino or something, because usually they're the ones that wear those type of swim shorts." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, not everyone. I mean, I do, because tan lines." And she's like,
"I break the mold, baby. I break the mold."
Oh, would you like some blueberries? I'm like, "No, I'm good, thanks."
I got my own.
But there's like Waseem, you're talking. Yeah, exactly. Waseem, you're talking about like confusing people. Mm-hmm. And there's other things. And for me, it's not only visuals, like the way what I look like ethnically, I guess you can say, but also the way I hold myself. So a lot of people, for example, at work think that I'm from Montreal. And I'm like, "Why do you think I'm from Montreal?" They're like, "Well, because your Arab background," the ones that know me, "your Arab background, you kind of speak French, and the way your attitude is." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" They're like, "You have more of a Montreal attitude than a Toronto attitude." And I'm like, okay, I can see bits of that. And then I remember actually distinctly asked one person that I was working with, a girl specifically, because there's always this confusion with me in terms of sexuality. For some reason, a whole bunch of people that I've met along the way think that I'm gay, just automatically, especially at work. I'm like, I get it, flight attendant, I understand that. 95% of male flight attendants, they're gay. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that portion of it. They're like, "No, it's not that."
Is that true? Is that a true statistic?
Not a true statistic, but it's pretty high. Like the difference, it's pretty high.
Okay.
And then they're like, no, it's not because of that. And I said, "Well, what is it then?" And they said, "Well, because for a straight dude, you don't look like a straight dude." I'm like, "Because what does that mean?" And they said, "Well, you're dressed well, your uniform is on properly, you don't look like a slob, your hair is done well, you at the time there were no masks, obviously, so like, you keep your facial hair, you basically keep yourself together fairly well." And I'm like, but what does that even mean? Like, I know a lot of my colleagues who are gay who don't keep themselves so well in public appearance. So I'm like, what is this? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's another othering that I find. That happens quite often. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that's great. It's not, and I'm not saying I'm offended by this at all. I'm not. For me, it's like, it's great. You can think that if you want. Good for you. But it's just another form of othering that, at least that I experience as well, apart from the ethnic part of things, but that as well.
I think sometimes also it's when you turn it on. Like sometimes I'll turn on. Okay, this just reminded me of like every time I get to a border crossing. So back in the day when I used to I would shave before I got to a border crossing, and I would make sure that I'm nice and clean shaven. I would walk around with a big smile on my face, try to look as especially in a post 9/11 world, right? Like I had to smile and be nice and speak as articulately English as possible, right? And say, and a part of it, even I think my use of the words, like I use the word lovely a lot, and I use the words like, "Oh, isn't that smashing?" Like I'll use certain words in order to kind of pass, and in order to like to have no trouble, right? And I think it for a lot of like third culture kids, I think it's like that's almost like a standard operating procedure, like because you're able to what I think they call a code switch. You could just switch over because okay, no, I need to speak in a different way now. I gotta do a different thing so you like you get to use it to your advantage, but you feel like you got to use it. And I don't actually like I don't live in the world of it shouldn't be this way, right? Like it shouldn't, because at the end of the day, like you as a person need to make you kind of got to deal with the reality the way it is, not the way you want it to be, right? Because that's reality. Reality is like, man, they're putting you in a box, and I understand I guess I understand the hubbub in I mean in a lot of places about like, no, it shouldn't be this way. It can be better. Woo! And I think, man, I don't know if it could be better. Like I think it's better. Like, you know, I don't know.
The code switching, though, you mentioned code switching. That reminds me of whenever it hasn't happened recently often, but I mean, whenever I do go back to Scarborough and I'm with my buddies that I grew up, automatically code switch back into Scarborough slang, Scarborough lingo. That I mean, unless to a lot of people, it's happened to some people that I know who didn't know me from that world. They knew me in my post Scarborough world, and they're like, "Who the hell is this?"
Oh yeah. Like, oh yeah, you know, if they know you for like, you know, people that like you'll meet, let's say you're playing soccer or whatever, and then and then you happen to, like with a bunch of people that only speak English, and then you enter the store, right? And it's like, you know, Yemeni owned or Palestinian owned or whatever. And then you start like chatting in Arabic with them. And that was, I always felt so cool because they would all like, all the friends would be like, whoa.
Yeah. But in my case, it's not.
Look at this guy
Arabs.
go.
I'm not talking about Arabs. I'm talking about like the guys I grew up with who are like, you know, Caribbean people, West Indian people. And it's just like, what, how do you fit into this?
Yeah. How does that
doesn't
work?
Make any sense. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, I think that's where like, so like, you know, let's say you're the person that has the curiosity, because you'll also meet people that like, I mean, I'm not angry with people. You just like, I understand that I don't fit into a particular box. Hence the whole reason why we're doing this podcast, right? Like this, like, because we, you know, don't fit into a particular category. And so it's a common experience where people like will either be curious to learn more, and they want to like be like, oh, how did that work out? Like, how did you come to be? Right. And that I think is, I find that very endearing when people ask that. Like I you know, like, and I wouldn't want to live in a world where people are afraid to ask that question. Like, okay, how did like, or to like, it would be worse for me if you held that question and just kept it inside, because then I don't know what you're thinking. And like, you know, like you're not open with what you're thinking. And then that makes me actually kind of crazy, because then I think like, I don't know what these people really think of me. And you kind of need feedback. Like, I mean, I'm going to speak for myself, but I think like the human experience, at least as far as I'm concerned, is I need feedback with regards to like who I am, right? Like I exist in relation to others. I don't exist as an island. So I kind of need feedback from people. And so when you cut that out because it's like rude to ask, which like, I don't like, it's like, there is, I would love to have like a clear rule where when it's rude to ask and when it's like cool to ask. But in general, I'm like, oh man, ask like, because I like, you know, I love candor in discussion. Like I love people that are just open. Like even if you're the first Arab I ever met, and all I hear about all you guys is that you guys are crazy, right? And so then that I would actually be like, oh, that's refreshing. Okay, let's have a discussion. Let's have a conversation. Like, well, what did you hear? What's the crazy part? It's like, so right. So it'll that I don't know. But am I on my own on this?
Well, I just wanted to admit, because I know MJ wants to jump in, but as you were saying that, I just thought of a very interesting parallel. So, and this relates to my job that pays my bills. So I find that so I'm gonna say that generally speaking, I find that people like us who are in our position of this for some time not fitting in, and how do you fit into places and the othering, I find that it's actually at some point becomes an advantage. And I found it to be an advantage for me, especially at work, because of traveling all the time and being in different situations and weird situations and not being home for X amount of days at a time type of thing. And then I'd meet people who come from, small towns in Quebec, small towns in Ontario, Saskatchewan, wherever it is, like small towns from all over the country. And they're just unable to adapt to the lifestyle. They can't, it's like they don't have those type of life experiences in general. Good, because they came from a small town. They don't have big life experiences, but I even have met people who are from, for example, like London, Ontario is not a small place. I've even met coworkers from like medium-sized cities in Canada who, and even passengers, just talking to them in general, they just, this world outside of what they know is so strange to them. And then when life throws something at them, they can't handle it. And so a lot of people that I've noticed that don't make it in my job, for example, are those types of people who really didn't experience the world, quote unquote, until they left their small town and started working for an airline. So I find for us, being able to not fit into boxes necessarily, but being able to insert ourselves in a situation that isn't necessarily our norm, we can adapt better than other people that I've met, I would say. So that's the one parallel that I find. So I take it as being an advantage, especially, my mixed upbringing and everything back in Scarborough. I've found it to be a good thing for me, generally speaking. So sorry, MJ.
First, Waseem, I love it. You use the word endearing. I love it when you ask where you're from. But that's the thing. Ask that question. Don't ask a different way. Just ask where you're from. That's it. There's no judgment in that. You're not putting. Just ask where you're from. And I love it when people ask. Here, there, everywhere. I don't mind answering this question. And in fact, the one place in the world I found that people were very open about it, and they were almost too self-aware about asking this "where are you from" question was Ireland. The Irish people they love asking you where are you from, and they want to engage with anyone from outside of their island. But they're every time they ask where are you from, listen, I don't mean to be racist. They're almost too self-aware. It's general questions are general. Not every question about race has to be a racist question, right?
Where it's like, well, I'm Arab. Oh no, that's a bad word. As if the identity is an insult.
And we've reached that stage in conversation. Exactly. So I love this question. I agree with you. I just think there's a setting, especially when you're at work. I'm one of these people, Pakistanis don't like this, but when you're at work, you're working. That's it. You don't do other things. When you're outside of work, no problem. And again, stadium, if you're in a shop and I'm standing next to you and I'm buying something, context matters. I love this question, but in my case, I felt the context was very inappropriate to be asking, and the way it was delivered and everything about it was very just weird. I wasn't offended, and I didn't take it offensively. I actively engaged with him, teachable moments and all that. In terms of what Rashed said, it is both a gift and a curse. These are often the same thing. The same thing will be the gift is the curse. You are an outsider, but because you are an outsider, you get to see things from the outside, which changes the way you would process things. When you say the village thing, people from smaller places or whatever, you can have big experiences, as you said, but I think you get very limited experiences. There might be depth to each experience that you have, that you are doing, but you're not going to engage with different types of experiences, right? Literally, you might have your best friend in the village, but you're not going to deal with your worst enemy who is from a different race. Whereas in a small city or a bigger where immigrants are, you might, and they'll challenge your worldview or they'll grow your worldview because of that kind of thing. I wouldn't say there's small experiences in villages or smaller places. They're definitely there. They're just not varied. They're not varied enough. You're not seeing the full spectrum. You might get the depth of it. You're not getting the length of it. That's really it. I don't know. You guys want to take it from there? I have
another point to bring up. and it's related to this, where are you from? And Waseem and MJ, you probably like, okay, I want to bring it back to our origins. All three of us have common origins. All three of us have links tracing back to either from the Middle East or having lived in the Middle East. All three of us are obviously Muslim background and all that kind of stuff. We also know that within the realm of our world, within the greater Islamic world, within the greater Middle Eastern world, stretching from the Arab countries, and then we can just go all the way to Pakistan and like cutting through Iran and stuff like that. There's an element of where are you from being asked amongst Arabs, for example, especially certain country in the Middle East. And I'm going to ask you, MJ, if this is the same type of deal for you in Pakistan in general, just within general society. You're asking where you're from, and you're asking very pointed questions. So this one country in particular, and when I describe this with Waseem, you're going to get it bang on right away. Where are you from? Which village are you from? What's your family's last name? And they're asking you these questions to figure out your religion. And they're going to pass judgment on you based on religion. This, I don't know if it happens as often now in this certain country, but it's a thing that happened for a long time within this one particular country. So then I wonder, within the greater Middle East, so I mean, there's a lot of expat Arabs that live in the Gulf region, for example, who work in the Gulf countries. Like you, MJ, growing up in Dubai, for example. Did you notice that, like, obviously you guys knew I'm talking about the Lebanese. So did you notice this happening a lot amongst the Arab population, the expat Arab population in Dubai, for example, or in Pakistan? Do you see this kind of happening where Karachi, for example, is a very multicultural society, or like a very mixed country in the sense that a lot of people ended up moving to Karachi who are from other parts of Pakistan for whatever reasons and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
So Pakistan in general, just from a country perspective, is a very heterogeneous population. It's definitely not homogeneous. That again could be a gift, but they're using it as a curse right now because exactly this in a Karachi level. So coming into the city now, you absolutely get asked questions about what's your name, which area of the city do you live in? That's a big one. When I tell them which area I live in, people are like, oh, that's not the rich neighborhood. We thought you would be from like a certain area in this city. We definitely thought you would be from there. If you speak English, you have to be from there. And I'm like, no, I live in real Karachi. I'm broke. I'm poor. Like, I don't know how to explain this any further to you guys. Thanks for rubbing it in. Thanks for bringing it up. The daily reminder. Oh, my 5-minute reminder's up. Thank you.
Now you've established yourself with everyone else as like a real G. It's like, I'm one of you people.
That's the funny part is there's total, when I say it, I'm very proud of like, yo, I don't live in that area, bro. I'm not one of those like people. And in fact, they call them here, those people, burgers. Like any local person who likes to eat burger over biryani is like a Western, like, the devil's taken. Yeah, they're called burgers. Like, you'll ask like, oh, I have a friend coming over, is he a burger? Like that, and that means like, is he from like a certain like class and certain like income level? But you definitely have, it's called community here. Like, you're like, oh, I'm from Punjab, your tribe, and like the religious element is not so much here because everyone just assumes you're Muslim, even though that's kind of false too.
Because there isn't,
like Pakistan ka matlab kya? Like, what was the meaning of Pakistan for Muslims? There's a saying here. So there definitely is, though, definitely based on language. Language is the main one. Which language do you speak? And based off of that, we will determine what you are or who you are. So if you're Pathan and you speak Pashto, you're like ostracized. Whereas if you're Pathan and you speak Urdu, then you're an outsider, but we're going to let you in the, like, you can be in the ring, but you're going to be an outsider always.
I have a question related to that. And that depends on
who the core group is. The core group determining the other people.
I have a question related to the language aspect in Pakistan, because sometimes late at night I get bored and I just read random stuff on Wikipedia and whatever. What I never knew, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I read online is that Punjabi is actually the dominant language in Pakistan.
Possibly
Actually spoken by like the majority of the population, which is something that I really didn't know.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know for a fact, but just from experiential and what I do know, yeah, like it makes sense because Punjab is the largest province in Pakistan and it is the most populous. Karachi is the most citywide, but that has the most people, farmers, villages, all of that. So it definitely is possible that that's the majority, like dominant language, but not the official one. Just like in Pakistan, the official sport is hockey, not cricket.
Field hockey.
Field hockey and not cricket, even though like cricket is by far the more popular one.
But in Karachi, obviously, the majority language spoken is Urdu because it's like an Urdu established area of the country.
It's the English of Pakistan. Yeah. Like it's the business standards.
So then what about that then? Like what about that type of, is there a general judgment passed between an Urdu speaker and a Punjabi speaker?
Yes, absolutely. And that's part of the problem here is we never had a Pierre Trudeau. We tried to get one with Imran Khan. We didn't get. What I mean by that is Pierre Trudeau, when he came into office, he instilled very famously a Canadian identity. He tried to get rid of the British past as much as possible. And he wanted that Canada and Canadians should have its own outlook on life and our own identity. And he's the one who instilled that. His son is, in my opinion, eroding that quite quickly in different ways, even though he's saying he's doing exactly that. I feel like the result is the exact opposite. But that's part of the problem is our Pakistan has never had a Pakistani identity. It's always been, I am Sindhi, I am Punjabi, and then within that, being from within Punjab, it then goes into, I am from Lahore, the major city. Within Lahore, I live in this area. Within which area I am from this family. Within this family, what does my father and brother do? Like it keeps, the divisions keep going in and in and in, whereas you just need a blanket. Yo, you're an American. The American dream, the beauty of it is it's such an umbrella general term that anyone can attach their emotions and their feeling to it. Whereas here you're doing the exact opposite. You're saying, no, like this. And we can go into this in another episode because I did have a very interesting conversation with somebody who was arguing that I am not Pakistani, he is not Pakistani. The only Pakistani is the ones who are serving in uniform. And to that, I replied, that's kind of weird for me as an American to think like that because there's no hierarchy in citizenry. If there is, if you are telling me you are 100% Pakistani and he is 75 and I'm 50%, then can you please reflect that on my taxes? Can I pay 50% tax? Because you yourself are saying I'm half a citizen. This does not exist. If I pay 100% of my taxes, I'm a citizen, period. It's a 0 or a 1. But we can talk about that later or next time. I don't know if it's going...
Well, I mean, look, you just went into like the relation of the states between the state and the citizen and like who's to define what. But one of the things that came up to my head sort of from this discussion or from what you guys were talking about is that the tribal sort of the tribal mentality, right? Like so that the tribal mentality is like one of the hallmarks of like a tribal mentality is that it exists because it brings us like we needed it to survive, right? Like for like 200,000 years, like you needed to have a tribe in order to like make it. So you needed a group of people to be like, you know, your team so that you can survive. And like, you know, that's through thick and thin, right? And it's like, you know, the tribe above all else. But I mean, you gave Lebanon as an example, like, you know, where there's a lot of like sort of violence between groups, like, you know, instilled actually, so in order to keep them busy, right? So that they're not like doing other things. And in a lot of countries, I mean, really, like, I think it would be harder to find a country where you don't have this anymore, where it's like the tribe, the sort of the tribal force has inflamed society, because it's so easy to pick at if you're trying to to gain power or to become an authority or to move up the political ranks, it's easy, right? Like it's too easy. It's easy, and people just get sucked into it, and they can't help it. Of like just being sucked into this sort of this tribal identity, and then you feel like you got to protect everything and everybody that's on your tribe, which means against that tribe, and then go ahead.
It's easy because it was designed this way. By the way, we shouldn't forget history. A lot of these places were designed by that woman who just died and her ancestors. Like, a lot of this was not picked by us, it was given to us. And like Pakistan, there is a theory that the lines were created so that it's a heterogeneous population, so that we know that the tribes and things are going to continue forever. We'll put them in a patch of land together so that they do it. And this is contemporaneous. At that time, contemporaneous letters have shown that this is the case, that the intention was to keep the tribalism and the clan aspect alive by the British and the colonizers.
But also,
Pakistan and Afghanistan are clear indications of that, because we're talking about them creating two countries out of territories that were historically tribal based, in the sense of there are different territories that each tribal ethnicity has, and then now all of a sudden you're telling them you're all the same country. After centuries of like open free movement, of no concept of us being within this realm type of thing.
This is why we need aliens to show up. Because I think tribalism, this idea of like being tribal is like as I was saying, it's built in to our like DNA. Like we've had it. So it's not that they didn't like install the software of tribalism onto Pakistan and said, hey, like they exploited a natural human tendency that existed in order to push political gains. And so it exists. And so that's why we need aliens, because I'm like, okay, then how you can't defeat tribalism. You can also do the same thing. You can utilize it, but we just have to hope that the aliens are like, I don't know,
and
stronger,
that's like
same size.
That's like the hope that the whole Star Trek franchise tries to geek alert, but that's like where the whole Star Trek hope for the future kind of comes into play, where there's always in all the different Star Trek shows and movies and everything like that over the years, there's always this allusion to the past of Earth and humanity, and that they've meet an alien race and they're at war with each other within their world, and they basically say, our people were like that too on Earth until we met those outside of our realm, and we realized that we were destroying ourselves, and that we have to work for the benefit of our specific planet as a whole, as opposed it's in order to be able to be be successful in beyond the stars type of thing, right? So yes, aliens, maybe that could be the wake-up call for humanity, for humans on Earth, and be like, we're a bunch of jackasses, we should be doing things better type of thing. There's always that doomsday scenario within the Star Trek realm, where it's just like the humans eventually destroyed everything, and then we had to fix things. It's like, oh crap.
Have you guys have you read Watchmen or seen the movie Watchmen?
We're talking about back in the day one, right? Like Mr. Manhattan and Dr. Manhattan and
Dr. Manhattan. Yeah.
Great. I love. It's one of my favorite movies. Yeah.
So in that movie, the smartest man in the world, who's also the richest man in the world, his grand plan at the end is to create an alien and unleash it on humanity as if like it's a random thing, so that humanity can band together and fight one common enemy. By the way, this idea, the Watchmen did it really well. They showed that
this is a classically religious idea, right? Like you have the Antichrist, you have the
devil, the evil components.
This is a classically religious idea, because what will unite people at the end of days is the evil bad guy coming out, like the true evil, and then there's a big battle at the end, and that's where the forces of good, if they unite, it's Lord of the Rings. It's like it's the exact it's a story, right? It's the story that ties together our histories.
And coronavirus was not the common enemy. That just divided us further. That did not unite us at all.
Well, I mean, there's a pretty good enemy, the one that divides us.
Remember that first week, everyone thought humanity would prevail and we would get together and we would, no, Big Pharma won. The end. Wall Street won.
They're always winning. Always winning. Always winning.
They always start with the capital, man. They have the capital, so they can just keep winning. It's like City. Screw Frick City.
Well, I mean, but I think that there's no like. I mean, I think that's one of the big. I mean, I imagine. I think the sort of a big takeaway for me generally with these types of conversations is sort of how do I other? Like how am I playing? Like how am I tribal? How am I letting sort of like my group identity sort of work its way into my like thoughts versus what I actually think, like, you know, like based on my own values and my own principles, ones that I've like sat down, because like I can't remember if we talked about this, but there was a guy, I can't remember at all, but I reflected on this a bit, is that like, you know, the Kierkegaard gives in his like philosophical like thing, is that Kierkegaard says that like, you know, every person needs to sit down and spend like a part of their life thinking about what is the most important like values to them, and they got to consider it, and they got to like, they can listen to others, but you got to go down to you is like, what's your top values? Well, like, and then once you're done thinking, you got to apply those values to sort of various things in your life and decisions, and make a bunch of decisions and act, and stop thinking and stop thinking about what my values are and like having that hold you back, but says like, now it's time to like apply, and wherever it leads, the application, wherever it leads, that's where you go. Right. Like, and like to be an independent human being, to be like a fully actualized person, to be a person that's like, to do that, because otherwise you just copy paste what the group says that you're a part of, and you never actually become who you are, because you never actually had your own like original thoughts. And what happened, and he describes that as like sad. Is like for a human not to become who they are, like to know themselves, to become who they are in their own like sort of unique, special way that only they can, you kind of lose a life. Like the person's living, but they're not really alive. Like they're not really making, like, yes, they're you know, they're eating, they're drinking, they're part of the group, but they're not like, they'll never know who they are. Like
just a robot
going
through motions.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with whatever you said about what Kierkegaard said, that like think and then start acting and all of that. The unfortunate truth in today's reality, it was already never fashionable to think, period. But in today's society with social media and stuff, it's even harder. Just time-wise, people don't have the time. They pretend like they don't, because they're so focused on other things that they don't necessarily take out that time to think about oneself. What is the purpose? What am I here for? What am I doing? Like, forget all this other, like the hat and this and that. If you take all of that away from me, who am I? Right? Like, that is the question. Who am I?
The thing is, for me, that like you talked about social media and all that kind of stuff. For me, I found a lot of people have now used whatever hashtag they're ascribing to make it a part of their identity, and this is who I am. But I'm like, you and 700 other million people. Like there was a time period where you could make a statement, and it was an alternative statement that was outlandish enough to the point where it would be an integral part of your identity as an individual that would go, let's say, against the grain, for example, against the government, whatever it was. And the civil rights movement in the United States kind of was like that. So like it was a large movement, and for good, generally speaking, for the good of an entire demographic of the United States. But it also was still enough against the grain, because there was still so much of society in the United States that was just against the civil rights movement, let's say, for example. But now today, cancel culture. We keep on coming back to cancel culture at some point. And it's just like the various things that people try and cancel nowadays. It's just like you're just jumping on the back of a freaking spaceship. And like there's so many other people that are doing this as well at the same time. Like, are you really being that distinct as an individual if you jump on board on the next big hashtag trend that's happening on social media? I've always believed in this. No, you didn't. Don't bullshit us. We know you haven't. It's just all of a sudden came up on your feed. You're like, oh, that's cool. Like sorry. Rant. So you know what really grinds my gears?
That's fine. Pepperidge Farm remembers. The first thing is, Rashed, what was it? I forgot. Oh man.
I went through a lot of things: civil rights, or jumping on a bandwagon, or a spaceship of sorts, or hashtag mania.
So the hashtag mania, my problem is exactly that someone will say hashtag Black Lives Matter, but they won't have studied any history after that. They wouldn't have read anything. They wouldn't have tried. Khalas, I did my job. I'm labeled myself as this, supporter of this, and that's it. They haven't done anything to actually justify.
Well, no, yeah, that's enough. Like, that's enough. I'm socially accepted now. Like, I'm socially accepted. Like, I did it. Like I did my like
nowadays share. What you said, Waseem, that like you think first, act second. Nowadays they act first and they don't think after, right? Like you act with your hashtag Black Lives Matter. That's me doing my acting, and theoretically that's baked. The thinking has been baked into that, but it hasn't. That's the problem. Is you've just empty words and you put it up there. The second thing, in terms of Rashed, cancel culture, I might get canceled for this one, but it's just funny that you said that, because definitely anyone who has ever tried to change society for the better has been ostracized, and mainstream has not allowed them. It's kind of weird because you have the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, talking about their heroes, in each one of those stories. The anecdotes that they provide has always gone against the status quo, has always gone against the mainstream. To be a prophet is to speak out against your society and to act against it. So it's just funny that you say that, because I wonder how society would react today to like Moses killing a man. Hashtag cancel Moses.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. Like, dude, when you read the stories,
when he's too scared to say anything.
But like when you read a lot of these biblical stories, for example, and you go into biblical stories and you hear about how, like, you know, the people rebelled, quote unquote, against their prophet or their messenger, whatever it is. Like, that's their form of cancel culture. Like,
but dude, I just don't understand. Cancel Joseph's brothers.
You don't even have to go that. I feel like you don't have to go that far back, right? Like, because, like, I mean, we're talking. I'm not about like measuring history with modern like values, like that. That's folly to me, right? Like you know, there are things that we share in common with everybody throughout history. That's why you can read something that's like 2,000 years old and get something out of it. Right? Like, that's why there are certain things that have lasted. But one of the things also is that, I mean, I like, just like when I think about the greats, people that have changed societies, they have also changed their minds, right? Like, so my example was like, is Malcolm X, right? Like Malcolm X, big player, right? Exactly. And there are multiple like sort of like eras in his life, right? Like versions of where there's been refinement, there's been a rethink, there's been, okay, where do I stand? And that's kind of like a midlife crisis. Like you can expect to have a bunch of midlife, hopefully you have a bunch of them in your life, so that you can assess like what's important to you, come back to basics, come back to who you are.
Oftentimes people have like an aha moment or like a moment of epiphany that makes them change. So for him, for Malcolm X, was when he went for Hajj. And he's like, and paraphrasing from the movie at least. Yeah, I never thought that I'd be sitting and praying beside a blue-eyed
like shoulder to shoulder
in Mecca. Like, it didn't make sense to him before he went there, because of how he got introduced to Islam by Nation of Islam. And I don't want to knock Nation of Islam at all, but obviously there are large differences in the teachings of Nation of Islam to the rest of the Muslim groups and orthodoxy and whatever it is. But yeah, there's always that one moment that makes someone reevaluate what they've held so dear for such a long time.
Well, there can be, and it takes a stupid amount of courage in order to make that right. Like that's what makes them great. Like they're like that is the factor, right? That you'll get some new information, and and instead of going, no, I'm just gonna keep doing things the way I normally do. Like, nah, I'm not gonna really I'm not gonna let because there is a bias or a tendency, like a human tendency to do that. And so when you're aware that is riding you on the back of your head, that it's like it wants you to ignore the information that'll force change, and to have the courage to look at it and to see, okay, well, whoa, how is this going to affect like my moves now? Like, how is this going to affect my actions? And to do that openly and honestly, I think we admire that type of like that trait or that quality in people, which is why we elevate them to as leaders. And that's why, like, I'm not like you, even though, like, philosophically, I'm like, your only leader is you. Like, you are your leader. You're the one that has to figure it out for yourself. It like Malcolm X can't figure it out for you, right? Like, he had to figure it out for himself too. So this like that's what I'm trying to kind of stress or to pull on, is that when things come at you, and how hard it is for you to do that, like to just acknowledge that how difficult it is for you to change your mind when you've had a particular worldview for so long. Either it's been fed to you as you were growing up, or you've kind of established it from your own sort of your own experiences, and the sort of the malleability of your life. It's like that's like when people harden, they just harden over time, and that's tying it to cancel culture. It's like a premature hardening, right? Because generally I find that it's the mob that cancels, and the mob is like am I like a comic crazy, but like they're all like a bunch of young people that like don't know what they're talking about yet, right? Like I feel like, because you haven't like, herd mentality. Like, because it's herd mentality, and like even in sharing and being a part of that, especially with the amplifier of social media, a large part of it is to kind of avoid dealing with feelings of guilt about your position in all of these things. And so then, okay, I'll do my part. So now I can like alleviate the guilt that is sitting in the back. I won't even like admit it, but like, man, I shared the hashtag, right? Like, this this person should get out of here. Like, they're the bad guy, not me. Like, how could no, I look at me, like, look at the virtue that I'm signaling. Look at all the, like, I'm swimming in virtue. Like, I got a pocket full of virtues.
I know you want to jump in, MJ, but there's one thing that I just wanted to say related to what you're saying, Simo, is that like the whole thing about change and recognizing your errors. I find that one of the biggest precursors or prerequisites to being able to grow and evolve as an individual is having that ability to recognize self-wrong and self-error, and being able to like be one of the like be the first one to admit your error and judgment of something, whatever it is, and be willing to learn from that and understand how that, whatever it is that you may have done wrong, or whatever perceived wrong opinions you may have had about something, whether they're just blatant ignorance. I find if someone can have that starting point, then it's amazing how much someone can change and evolve, and then look back on themselves even 5 years later and say, who the hell was that person, type of thing.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. To be strong, the definition of strong is that you're like, yo, I did something wrong and I'm sorry, and I change, I develop, I grow. I'm not going to make that mistake. I may make others, but I'm not going to do that one again. I've learned from it. And I just want to, so that's what we teach our children, and that's what we tell ourselves to sleep at night. But what plays out in the real world, which has real world consequences, is very different. So what I mean by that is we now live in an era where Donald Trump is the counterpuncher. To admit wrong is the number one sin. The one thing he'll never do is say, yeah, I was wrong. And that's what people are attracted to. This is what's scary. It's not him. I'm not blaming the individual. I'm talking about the herd, the group behind him that loves what he's saying, that, hell no, he's never wrong. And I love that about him. So we live in a time where we say strong people need to reflect, and this. Is
that your best hillbilly accent?
That like strong people do this and strong people do that, and yet we as a society, as a group, maybe not you, me, him individually, but we have elected the exact opposite. And the gentleman who came after him, I don't know anything about him because I feel he's always sleeping. Or when he does sleep, when he does talk, I end up sleeping. So I don't know too much about him. All I know is he as well has not developed in 30 years of career politicking.
Mm-hmm.
There's been no change. And the other thing I do want to mention with the successor is it's weird how quickly we as people forget their plans. Before election, it's I have this plan, build back better, and it'll do general things. But after 30 years, how are you still talking generally? Wouldn't you give the devil is in the details? How come you guys don't give any details that like this is exactly how will get it done?
Because then they'll copy me. Then the other team will copy all my moves, man.
This is me just ranting. We're getting off topic, but I'm just saying, like,
man,
viewers beware.
Wait. Before I don't, guys, the politics.
No, I know. And the thing is that you brought up something and I want to say something so badly, but it's going to take us on a tangent that we really don't have time for.
I'm just connecting the micro and the macro. That's all. I'm just trying to connect that we say this to each other. And I agree wholeheartedly that a smart person, a strong person will admit fault and do things. On a macro level, we're not following our own advice. The thing we're telling our children, we're not following. That's
my
all
question. Like, I think the question that I urge, like, you to ask yourself, and for a person to ask themselves, if they're either in this. First thing, if you're in this like sort of tribal world, you're definitely not listening to us. But if you like, you're definitely not like definitely not. But the question that I think you can, or the tool you can use, in order to kind of keep yourself like sort of fresh, I think on this type of stuff, is to ask, what would it like if you hold an opinion? You ask the question, what information would make me change my mind on this? Like, what information would make me change my opinion? So like, like, for example, I think, like, as an example, I think Trump is the greatest man ever, and he does not make any mistakes, right? Of course he doesn't make any mistakes. Okay, now what would he have to do for me to change my mind? And if I can't think of anything, then oh boy, like, then I'm in a rut, like because then you're like, okay, so there's no information that'll ever make you change your mind, and then that you're in the, like, you're definitely not in the categories of the greats that we were just talking about, of people that like saw new information and changed their minds, and through that created waves of change and waves of movement, and the world's better as a result of that.
Yes. Hallelujah. Amen, bro. Amen. Hallelujah. Like, I agree. It's a wrap.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's true.
We're coming up on an hour. Yeah. So, all right. Well, sorry to do that, guys.
Just Thor's hammer came down on the conference.
Yeah, it's
the
like
third culture
boom.
Conversation.
Yeah.
Where you from? What's gonna make you change your mind about where you from?
Pretty much.
Well, by the way, with that, I do want to add one complexity. Sometimes there's times where information won't change them, but experience will. So if you tell somebody that living off of minimum wage is this, and this, they won't, in their head, they'll justify it a different way. Just buy something at Dollar General or do something until they're living it, until they've experienced hand to mouth, check to check living. They won't change. So I get what you mean. There are, information is definitely the beginning, but there are times where you just need to get your ass kicked. Like, until you get punched by Mike Tyson, everyone talks shit in the bar that, like, put me in the ring with Tyson, I'll do this. Like, put him in the ring, and then we'll see. Like,
what's if everyone got an opinion until they get like
everyone has a plan. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's what I was getting at. Exactly that.
Dude, it's like you talk about boxing. It reminds me of that viral video that went around for a long time, where there's that one dude who would just basically at his boxing gym would just like ream on people like in sparring bouts, and like people that were clearly weaker than him, and then he met his match and he'd be running away, and like
Well, and I mean, hell, like, even if you like, if you're sparring and you're reaming on everybody, then you're gonna have a hard time trying to find people to spar with you, and that's not gonna be a lot of fun, right?
Like he would do it with complete beginners type of thing, and then this one dude at his gym was like, "Dude, what the hell?" and complaining about like it
and punched him in the face.
There's a. I mean, it's not. Is it bad to say that it's satisfying watching someone get beat the crap out of them after they've been bullying people for so long? Like, there's a certain satisfaction, and is that wrong?
No, bro. Our justice served. There's a whole subreddit about
it. It's not wrong at all, man.
We need more of that. That's the problem. We need more.
I don't want to sound like I mean, I'm sure there's times when I sound like a jackass, but this is a moment where I don't want to sound like a jackass. Not to say that I want to I mean, sometimes violence is appropriate. So
really. We've been talking about Malcolm X. That was his point. That's why nobody likes him, is because that's what he says, that at some points, like you're forcing
armed struggle is necessary.
I mean, and for me, that statement, sometimes violence is appropriate. I mean, honestly, is the jury's out. I'm still not I can't I don't have a final decision on that. I can't be like, come
to Pakistan. You'll get a decision.
No, I know, but stressors. I know, man. It's stressors. Like, still, it should okay, if you're, let's say you're taking violence against a punching bag, that's okay. So if we're going to include violence against inanimate objects, like if you want to take a baseball bat and go beat up a car to get your frustrations out, and you can do that. I think you can go in America, man, that's great. Everything can be capitalized on, right? And so that feeling, you can go do that. That's fun. It's like they give you safety equipment and you can go smack stuff. And that feels good, and that's violence. And so in that, yeah, sure, they're great. Like there is physical frustrations, got to get out somehow. But violence against humans, by humans, even in that, even if it feels like this is great, even if the person committed violence, what was it? An eye for an eye will leave the whole world blind, right? This is guys, I'm so sorry. We're going deep. As we're wrapping up, we might as well do this at the beginning of the conversation, not the end.
The plane was landing, and then it just sight.
And then sorry, guys.
There was a deer on the runway, so we had
to because abort. You say I'm gonna blame you because you say
we're going for a go around, stuff. Friends.
Because you literally hooked me. You were like, man, violence. Now we're gonna start talking about this. Okay.
Put that in the parking lot, as they said when I was doing my initial training for work way back 13 years ago now. Yeah. There was this thing where they said, if you have questions or points to make, we'll put it in the parking lot and come back to it later. Yeah. So this is something that definitely would
walk a day in my shoes. Okay, we'll talk about violence next time then. All right.
Yay, go violence.
Yay. Literally, I woke up this morning and I was like, man, I really want to talk about positive things. I want to leave a positive taste in people's mouth. Not like now we're gonna talk about violence.
Forget that. We need to keep them on the edge. We need cliffhangers. Every good book or every good television series has a cliffhanger at the end. That's like, I want to watch the next one. In this case, you're gonna want to listen to us.
You may agree, you may disagree. Please share your comments. I actually don't know how you can. I think we just, if you guys are on the gram, we just started an Instagram page to put all this stuff on. So feel free to drop the comments on us and let us know what you think about aliens and Kierkegaard and tribalism. We'll read them. We'll read them.
Tell them they will read them. I don't give a flying fuck.
Who?
I'm still trying to figure out how I can put a post onto Instagram with a hyperlink directly to an episode, because it's it brings it up as a text, and I'm like, I want people just able to push it.
It's not allowed, man. It's not allowed.
Weird. Okay, we'll talk about it off camera.
It's not allowed, man. It's not allowed.
Instagram is the most limited, like self-limited platform I've ever experienced. But that's
But that's what isn't that there's
okay,
a campaign.
Bye guys. Okay.
Make Instagram again, everybody.
We're gonna continue this conversation on the outside now. Love you, everybody. Thanks for listening.
No, we won't. This is a recording, but we won't record because we're gonna hang up. That's it. Goodbye. I'll see you guys later.
He's
all
sick
right.
of us.
Have a great week, everybody. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.